Hi my friends, welcome to the channel English Professionally, and we continue our playlist English Grammar from Zero, lesson 24. Okay, we continue talking about present simple to be, and so really the question is how to make a negative form. So you need to add not. Look, it was I am at home, and you have I'm not at home. So I'm not at home, it's a full form, or it can be a short form. I'm not at home. Look, I am, and I'm at home. I'm not at home. I'm at work. We say we are, it's a full form, or we are not. We are inside, or we are not inside. We are inside, it's a short form, and it can be, a short form, so in negative. So we aren't inside. We are outside. You are right. You are not right. Or it can be a short form. You are right. You aren't right. You are wrong. They are rich. They are not rich. Or it can be a short form. They are rich. They aren't. They aren't rich. They are poor. Okay, more examples and more practice. So he is a businessman. He is not a businessman. He is a businessman, it's a short form, or he isn't a businessman. He is a manager. She is a manager. She is not a manager, or a short form. She is a manager. She isn't a manager. She is a businesswoman. It is a new car. It is not a new car. It's a new car. It isn't a new car. It's an old car. Okay, so you know that we say I'm not, so we often use a short form. So in our conversation, we, you, they aren't, and he, she, it isn't. Okay, let's look at more examples. I'm not married. I'm single. We aren't friends and we aren't enemies. They aren't partners. They are only friends, or they are just friends. He isn't hungry. He is thirsty. She isn't American. She is Russian. It isn't bad. It's very good. Okay, so I'm not hungry. I don't want to eat. So the most difficult thing is to understand when we use am not, isn't, aren't, and don't and doesn't. So I think that you remember this rule that if you have a verb in present simple like want, go, do, we need to use don't or doesn't. If you don't have a verb, like here, I'm not hungry, so you need to use the form of to be. Okay, I'm not hungry. Next, we are at home. We aren't at home. We are in the park. You aren't lazy. You are hardworking. They aren't stupid, or they aren't silly. They are clever, or they are smart. Okay, next, she isn't our teacher. She is their teacher. He isn't your friend. He is our friend. It isn't a good idea. It's a very bad idea. So you know that we put an article before very if we have a noun after it, yeah? It's a very bad idea. I'm not busy. I'm free. We are students. We work. So we have a verb and we don't need the form of to be. We work. You aren't right. You are wrong, or you're mistaken. I'm mistaken. They're together, but they aren't married. He isn't tall, he's short. It isn't on the table, it's on the chair. I think he's right, if I'm not mistaken. Okay? And more examples, let's talk about the weather. So, it isn't cold, it's warm. It isn't good, it's bad. It isn't interesting, it's boring. It isn't strange, it's normal. It isn't difficult, it's easy, it's obvious. It isn't sunny, it's cloudy, it's rainy, it's windy. It isn't an interesting job, it's a boring job. It isn't on the right, it's on the left. It isn't a good choice, it's a bad choice. So, and we have more examples. Yeah, so it's a very good practice. You can listen and repeat. So, present simple to be negative. He isn't lazy. He isn't a lazy person. I'm not at home. I'm at work. We aren't at home. We're in the park. It isn't an effective method. I'm not married. I'm single. She isn't a designer. She's a doctor. He isn't hungry. He is thirsty. He isn't a businessman. He is a manager. We aren't friends and we aren't enemies. It isn't cold. It's warm. I'm not tight. It isn't bad. It's good. It isn't a bad idea. It's a good idea. I'm not American. I'm Russian. It isn't sunny. It's cloudy. It's rainy. It isn't windy. They aren't expensive. It isn't a cheap thing. They aren't rich. They're poor. It isn't the best choice. It isn't comfortable. It isn't effective. She isn't a manager. She's a housewife. It isn't an expensive thing. It isn't strange. It's normal. You aren't right. It isn't interesting. It isn't an interesting book. It isn't boring. It isn't a boring movie. They aren't stupid, or they aren't silly. They aren't foolish. They're clever. They are smart. It isn't on the table. It's on the chair. It isn't free. You need to pay. It isn't difficult. It's easy. It's obvious. He isn't an angry person. He isn't rich. He isn't a rich person and he isn't busy. We aren't inside. We are outside. It isn't an interesting offer. My friends aren't there. My friends are here. I'm not hungry. I don't want to eat. I'm not from Canada. I'm from the United States. She isn't American. She is Russian. It isn't a new car. It's an old car. They aren't in America. They're in London. It isn't a bad choice. It's a very good choice. They aren't in the park. They're in another place. It isn't on the right. It's on the left. It isn't a boring lesson. It isn't useful. You aren't lazy. You're hardworking. They aren't partners, they are only friends. I'm not at home, I'm in the office. We aren't students. He isn't our boss. She isn't our teacher. We aren't classmates. She isn't my girlfriend. He isn't my boyfriend. It isn't far. It's near. Okay, so thank you very much. So let's continue this playlist. Thank you.